This is Divorce Court, presided over by Judge William Keene. In the case we'll be seeing today, Harvey Mandrake is suing Geraldine Mandrake, his wife of 6 years, for divorce on the grounds of mental cruelty. Mrs. Mandrake is countersuing, charging her husband with adultery.
All right, Mandrake versus Mandrake. Mr. Bryant, do you desire to make an opening statement?
Yes, I do, Your Honor. Mrs. Mandrake, a successful comedian, built her career by publicly humiliating her husband. No subject was sacred to her, not his intelligence, his performance as a police officer, nor his performance in bed. As a result of his wife's abuse, Mr. Mandrake's emotional health, as well as his career in law enforcement, has been severely strained. He seeks a divorce on the ground of mental cruelty. He further seeks possession of their house, spousal support of $5,000 a month, and an equitable division of their marital assets. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Beals, are you going to make an opening statement now?
Yes, I shall, Your Honor. Thank you. To the contrary, the evidence in this case will show, and manifestly so, that Mrs. Mandrake was in fact a very supportive wife, one who would never do anything to embarrass or humiliate the man she loves. But the disturbing aspect of this case is that she actually caught her husband in an act of unfaithfulness with his partner in the family home. In this respect, my client will prove that Mr. Mandrake used police business as a cover for his infidelities. My client therefore sues on the ground of adultery and seeks the family home, one half of the marital assets, and $1,500 per month in spousal support.
Thank you. Mr. Bryant, call your first witness, please.
I call Harvey Mandrake to the stand, Your Honor.
Mr. Mandrake, step forward.
Now taking the stand as the plaintiff, Harvey Mandrake. Mr. Mandrake is charging his wife with mental cruelty, claiming that she derived material for her stand-up comedy act from their personal life and used this material to embarrass him and jeopardize his career as a police officer.
All right, Mr. Bryant, let's proceed.
Mr. Mandrake, can you tell the court how you met your wife?
Well, we're in community college together. Geraldine had stumbled into a criminology course, was obviously lost. I suppose that was because she was so busy making jokes she couldn't take any notes. But anyway, while we were talking, she handcuffed my foot to my desk, just as a gag. But the real joke comes in because, you see, I had to sit through 3 whole classes because she couldn't find the key. Well, we were married about 6 months later, and we had our rings designed as little gold handcuffs.
Did you support your wife in her decision to become a comedian?
Well, at first, yes. I worked down at the police department, and she used to call me all the time. She was working as a court reporter at that time. And she'd come down, tell jokes. I remember one day she came in and posed as a bag lady. It took me 10 minutes before I finally realized it was her.
And what else did she do?
Well, she used to like to play practical jokes with people a lot. But she couldn't quite get it together, so she started telling innocent jokes at first. You know, harmless jokes, talking dogs, magical lamps. But then she decided she wanted something more personal. So she started using these insulting one-liners and using me as the brunt of her jokes. And that's when things started to get bad.
So exactly how did her material change?
Well, for example, I've got this medical problem. Lots of guys have it. But I didn't want it publicly announced. She started using it as part of her routine in her jokes. She'd tell people about our personal lives. I couldn't say anything at home without her using it on stage in her routine.
How else did she debase you in her comedy routines?
She not only announced that I was a lousy lover, she told the whole world I was a lousy cop. Now, I didn't mind it when she cracked that 3 guys graduated ahead of me in the academy, Larry, Moe, and Curly. But when she started ragging on my partners and my department as well, I got steamed.
Well, what kinds of things did she say?
Well, she told the TV audience that the only way that you could get a ticket in my precinct was if you asked for change on a bribe. And she joked about me and my partner Janice, saying things like they spent an awful lot of time frisking each other. And she even publicly accused Janice and I of having an affair.
Well, were you having an affair with her?
Of course not. Janice is a friend. She's a damn good cop.
At what point did you decide to file for divorce?
When I didn't get promoted. She didn't even say anything like, gee, honey, I'm sorry. All she did was got steam because she'd worked up a bunch of detective and promotion jokes, and now they were obviously obsolete. Well, I couldn't take it. That's when I decided that I was going to pack up and leave. And that's what I did.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Beals, cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Mandrake, now, if your wife didn't care anything about you, why is it that she called you every day while she was on tour?
She probably hoped I'd say something she could use in her routine.
Isn't it a fact, really, that you overreacted to her harmless jokes, like the time you dragged her off the stage at the county fair?
Now look, she was telling people that I said police brutality means never having to say you're sorry.
Wasn't it you, in the first instance, Mr. Mandrake, who suggested that she make fun of the police
Well,
department?
fun, yes. But she's gotten completely out of line, ragging on the department, talking about Janice as well.
Now, speaking about Janice, Mr. Mandrake, isn't it a fact that you've been spending a lot of time with your partner, both on duty as well as after hours?
Well, she's my partner. I mean, you know, cops have to unwind a little. We get together, we have a few drinks, and talk a little after hours, that's all.
Were you just unwinding when you both had to be thrown out of Sonny's Cove at 4 a.m.?
Hey, we have, who else is there to talk to at 2:30 in the morning, huh?
How about your wife?
Geraldine was always out of town.
And you took
Always.
I see, and you took advantage of her absence, didn't you? By having this romantic tryst with Miss Metcalf while she was gone.
No way.
Isn't it a fact that you were actually reprimanded for propositioning a female traffic offender?
Oh, look, now that was a trumped-up charge. She was trying to get out of a ticket.
Did she get out of that ticket?
Well, yes, she did.
So then they believed her and not you, didn't they?
Yeah. But they were wrong.
No further questions, Your Honor.
You may step down. Call your next witness, please, Mr.
While
Bryant.
Mr. Mandrake leaves the stand, we have time for a short break. We return now to divorce court. About to testify on behalf of Harvey Mandrake is his partner, Officer Janice Metcalf.
All right, Mr. Bryant.
Miss Metcalf, how did Geraldine Mandrake's comedy routines affect Harvey's performance as a policeman?
When I met Harv, his nickname was Clint, you know, like Clint Eastwood. And he's a nice guy, but got real cool when the heat was on. And after she started dragging him down, then he lost his confidence and his concentration. The guys started calling him Wimp. And I can't repeat what they called her, but it started getting to him.
Well, can you give us an example?
Well, I could see it in his work, especially on the days after she'd been on TV. He'd file up reports, miss evidence. I mean, once he was so distracted, he forgot to cuff this kid, and he bolted, and it took us hours before we could catch that kid again.
Did Geraldine ever embarrass her husband in front of his peers?
Yes. Geraldine had offered to entertain at this annual charity dinner that the department hosts to show that she didn't have a grudge against cops. So Geraldine gets up there and crucifies Harv. I mean, she goes on and on about their sex life, their home life, right down to the way he brushes his teeth. You know, people really started leaving kind of early, and Geraldine was the only one that laughed. You know, nobody could look Harv in the eye for days.
Didn't she also attack his reputation as a police officer that evening?
Yes, she did. She said that Harv made more money in crime than most criminals. You know, it's not what Geraldine says. It's the way she kept looking at him, like she really wanted to make him miserable.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination, Mr. Beals.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Miss Metcalf, isn't it a fact that you turned down a promotion to sergeant, as a matter of fact, so that you could continue spending your time with Mr. Mandrake?
I turned it down because I didn't want a desk job.
Isn't it a fact that you turned it down so that you could continue spending more nights with Mr. Mandrake at the Westlake Motel?
No, that was official police business. We were there on a stakeout.
Would you have us to believe that that stakeout was authorized by your department?
Well, no. I mean, you know, we were acting on a hunch.
I see. You know, I wonder whose hunch was stronger, yours or
And
my
we
client's.
did apprehend a suspect,
Thank
okay?
you. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down. Mr. Bryant, call your next witness, please.
I have no further witnesses, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Beals, call your first witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. I call Geraldine Mandrake to the stand.
Mrs. Mandrake, step forward.
Geraldine Mandrake, the defendant, is about to testify. Mrs. Mandrake is countersuing on grounds of adultery. Mr. Mandrake has accused his wife of publicly embarrassing him and impeding his career as a police officer through her comedy routines.
All right, let's proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mrs. Mandrake, was your marriage to your husband a happy one?
Yes, at first. For a cop, Harvey was a lot of fun. He was caring and considerate, and he wasn't married to his badge. He really wanted me to be happy. For a while, he supported my dream of becoming a professional comedian. He used to say Joan Rivers had her Edgar, Phyllis Diller had her Fang, and I had Harvey.
Now, what changed his attitude?
Well, people always get riled when you get a little close to the truth. But that's what makes it funny. I tried all of my jokes out on Harvey. The ones he said no to, I never repeated on stage. Still, some of them he couldn't even face at home. He started really getting jealous of my success. So Harvey started hitting me with this, a cop's wife has to have a tight lip routine.
I see. Were you on the road a lot of the time?
Yeah. You can't make people laugh from your living room. You've got to play clubs everywhere. But I came home every chance I could, and I called every day, although Harvey usually wasn't home.
Do you have any reason to believe that your husband was being unfaithful to you?
Yes. He started staying away overnight, even when I was in town, claiming he was at the station. But I would call him there, and the desk sergeant, they said they didn't know where he was. What a bunch of baloney. All cops have to leave a number with the desk. His buddies were just covering for him so he could play hide the nightstick with Miss Law Enforcement.
Objection, Your Honor. I move to strike that inflammatory comment.
All right, it'll be stricken from the record. Go ahead, Mr. Beals.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, did you ever catch him with his partner in your home?
Yes. I came home from Miami 2 days early and found him in the bathroom shaving, wearing only a towel while she was in our shower.
Did he have any explanation for this?
Police business. Looked to me like they had just finished an undercover operation.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mrs. Mandrake, didn't you embarrass your husband on national television by saying, and I quote, he was so dumb that his 5 happiest years were the first grade?
I was only kidding. Harv was a whiz in school.
And didn't you carry around a tape recorder so that you could better recount your husband's private concerns to your many fans?
Look, I use that recorder in my work to make notes, not to record my husband's amateur ramblings.
And were his sexual problems the kind of ramblings that you deny exploiting?
Look, when you make love like Harv does, humor is all you got left.
And by insulting him at that police charity dinner, didn't you show a total disregard for your husband's feelings?
I didn't insult him there. We're talking about comedy. That's what they were hiring me for.
What kind of comedy prompted you on a different occasion to tell your husband's supervisor that your husband was moonlighting as a male stripper?
Well, I was angry. He was sleeping around. I wanted them to keep an eye on him.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down. Call your
While
next
Geraldine
witness, Mr.
Mandrake leaves the stand, we
Thank
have
you, Your
time
Honor.
for
I
a
call
break.
Manny Berman to the stand.
We return now to divorce court. About to testify on behalf of Geraldine Mandrake is her former manager, Manny Berman, owner of the Star Lounge.
All right, Mr. Beals.
Mr. Berman, how long have you known Geraldine Mandrake?
3. No. 2 years. She performed on talent night at my club, and I knew right at the start she had panache. Star quality.
Now, did she ever intimate to you any desire to defame her husband?
No. I remember getting her on a national radio show, and she told everybody how Harvey was a real sweet guy, and how much she loved him, and that she owed everything to him.
How have Mr. Mandrake's accusations affected his wife?
Oh, she's a wreck. And believe me, it's hurting her career, too. It's been weeks since she came up with a 4-star yuck. And then when she found out that Harvey had been doing a little extra duty with his partner, she wouldn't leave her hotel room for 2 days. I had to cancel 3 shows.
Now, did you ever see Mr. Mandrake in an adulterous situation?
Oh, yeah, it was terrible. You see, once in a while I go to the strip joint, the leg room. I'm checking on new talent. Well, one night I'm there, and who do I see standing over in a corner, putting the moves on some 2-bit barfly, but him, Harvey.
Did you speak to him that night?
No. Well, you see, I tried to get over to him, but before I had a chance to talk to him, he left with the woman.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Bryant, cross-examination.
Mr. Berman, isn't Geraldine's career faltering not because she's upset with her husband, but because you are an inept manager?
Look, I'm one of the best in the business, and her career is not faltering. Geraldine is one of the greatest...
Regarding the comments Geraldine made on the radio, didn't she actually say, and I quote, I love my husband even though our sex life is a crime. It's assault with a dead weapon.
Well, she has a sense of humor.
And didn't she also say, again I quote, "I owe everything to my husband, and in a few years I'll have him all paid off"?
Yeah, but when she said it, it was funny.
Mr. Berman, you didn't really see anything happen between Mr. Mandrake and this so-called barfly at the legroom, now did you?
No, but they left together.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Berman, you may step down. Mr. Beals, call your next witness.
No further witnesses, Your Honor. The defense rests.
Mr. Bryant, anything further from the plaintiff?
Your Honor, at this time I'd like to reopen my case by recalling Mr. Mandrake to the stand to rebut the charges made against him.
You may. Mr. Mandrake, step forward.
Now returning to the stand is Harvey Mandrake. Mr. Mandrake, a 6-year veteran of the Metropolitan Police Force, is apparently being recalled to answer charges that he committed adultery with his partner and other women.
Mr. Mandrake, you're still under oath. Just be seated. Go ahead, Mr. Bryant.
Mr. Mandrake, can you tell us why your partner was in your home that night that Geraldine came back to your home?
Yes, we were working a double shift, 24 hours. And we had a 30-minute break in between. Now, the precinct was about, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 miles from our house. My house was closer, so I said, listen, why don't we just stop at the house? It's a lot closer. Perfectly innocent.
And what really took place in the leg room where Mr. Berman claims to have seen you?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. It's a good thing Manny didn't come up to me. He'd have blown my cover. You see, I was asked by the DA's district attorney's office to pose as a John in an undercover operation to expose some prostitutes that were paying off illegal vice squad members of our department. Thank God it didn't happen. I busted her, and that girl I left with, she went to jail.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Beals, do you want to cross-examine any further?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Mandrake, now do you really expect for this court, or your wife for that matter, to excuse your adulterous behavior just because you claim it was police business?
Look, that was a sting operation. The chief gave me a commendation for that.
Now, the day that Miss Metcalf was in your shower, isn't it a fact that your wife had just caught you and your partner after you had just had sex in your own home?
No, it was 100 degrees outside. We had to sit 12 more hours in an unair-conditioned car. Now, we were only cleaning up between shifts. I just told you that.
So what are these then, sir? What? Modern day police practices? I mean, taking showers with your female partner?
I didn't shower with her. Now, there was nothing going on between us.
Haven't you been sleeping with Miss Metcalf since you separated from my client?
No. It's against department regulation.
And isn't that why you recently filed to change your partner?
Well, yes, but we weren't violating any of the rules. Janice and I plan to be engaged as soon as this is over.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down. Anything further now from the plaintiff?
No, plaintiff rests, Your Honor.
Mr. Beals, anything further from the defendant?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Let me hear your closing argument, Mr. Bryant.
Your Honor, Mr. Mandrake has been a faithful and supportive husband. He has been subjected to extreme public ridicule and derision by his wife, all for the selfish goal of advancing her career at his expense. There has been no evidence presented to support Mrs. Mandrake's charge of adultery on the part of my client. Your Honor, Mr. Mandrake should be granted a divorce on the ground of mental cruelty. We ask that he be awarded the possession of their house, spousal support of $5,000 a month, and an equitable division of their marital assets. Thank you.
Mr. Beals.
Thank you, Your Honor. Simply put, I simply disagree most vehemently with counsel because my client has proven adultery in this case. And the fact of the matter is that notwithstanding Mr. Mandrake's undue sensitivity to what is clearly a joke in everyone else's mind, the fact of the matter is that his wife has been a loving and considerate and caring wife. She always loved her husband and respected him. My client should be granted a divorce on the ground of adultery, and she asked this court to award her the family home, 1/2 of the marital assets, and $1,500 per month in spousal support.
Thank you, counsel.
While Judge Keene considers the testimony in this case, we have time for a short break. We return now to divorce court where Judge Keene is about to render his decision.
All right, the Mandrake divorce is no laughing matter. No divorce is a laughing matter. It is perhaps the most traumatic period that two people go through, a painful disruption of their lives, and at times the ugliest of all litigation. We're not processing cases here in divorce court. We're processing people's lives. Mrs. Mandrake, you will take away no one-liners from your parents here in court today. For 6 years, the Mandrakes had a viable marriage. each with a good career. They could not sustain it. I've searched in vain for any remaining legitimate object of matrimony left in this union. I can find none. A divorce will therefore be granted in this case. Now, the mental cruelty in Mr. Mandrake's complaint has been proved. The adultery in Mrs. Mandrake's cross-complaint has not been proved by the standard that the law requires, which is a preponderance of the evidence. By that we mean evidence, when weighed with that opposed to it, has more convincing force and the greater probability of truth. Now, considering the respective jobs of Mr. Mandrake and Mrs. Mandrake, each making a good living, spousal support in this case is not indicated, and none will be ordered. The family home I will order sold forthwith and the proceeds equally divided. The balance of the marital assets, which are identified in the financial statements on file, will also be equally divided. That will mean a total of $33,000 for Mr. Mandrake and $33,000 for Mrs. Mandrake. The plaintiff will prepare the written judgment. It'll be approved as to form and content by the defendant. You'll submit it to me for my signature within 30 days and for filing. This court stands now in recess.
Divorce Court is a dramatization based on cases and issues raised in the family courts of this nation. The jurisdiction is an amalgamation of the laws of all 50 states. Therefore, the laws of your community may differ. The cases are argued by attorneys and presided over by Judge William Keene, who served on the Superior Court of Los Angeles for 18 years.